Do you ever feel that you would achieve so much more if you could just get out of your own way? Most people fail to succeed not because of external factors, but because they let their own fears prevent them from even trying. Tony Robbins has spent over 40 years looking into the patterns that stop us from succeeding, and those that lead us to get the life that we want. He created Personal Power 2 to help guide his own career, relationships, health, and finances. These are the foundational strategy that he's used to trigger growth and change also in professional athletes, world leaders, and top business leaders. Leaders like Dana White, president of the UFC, who in today's episode, you'll hear talk about the impact personal power had on his life. For podcast listeners, we like to offer you this incredible product for 20% less than retail price. With this 30-day program, you'll create unstoppable confidence and live life on your terms. That's right. If you're listening right now, you can go to tonyrobbins.com/powerup. That's tonyrobbins.com/POWERUP and enter promo code UFC19 to get a 20% discount on the product that will help you achieve real results. This offer expires May 30th, 2019. In this episode of the Tony Robbins Podcast, we're bringing you to Business Mastery, where Tony interviews the business leaders behind some of today's fastest growing companies. You're going to have a front row seat as Tony sits down with Dana White, the current president of the Ultimate Fighting Championship, or UFC, the man who took the once fledgling organization from near bankruptcy to a globally popular multi-billion-dollar enterprise. He's outspoken, he's charismatic, he's unabashedly unapologetic. It's fair to say there are not many leaders of major sporting organizations quite like Dana White. He comes from humble beginnings in the Northeast, and his fight to the top was an unlikely one, and nothing short of a roller coaster ride. Dana talks to Tony about the serendipitous mix of events that catapulted him from the bottom all the way to the top of the UFC, and the risky decisions he made along the way that led the UFC to its ultimate comeback, like the decision to embrace regulation instead of run from it, to move away from pay-per-view and broadcast fights on free TV, and perhaps the biggest decision of all, the one that changed the face of the sport, to allow female fighters into the organization. Dana has achieved success on a massive scale. He sold UFC for a whopping $4 billion back in 2017. But his fight is not over, and as he tells Tony in this special interview, he feels he hasn't even scratched the surface of his total impact.
Let's get down to business. You take on a business that is in tatters, near bankruptcy. In 15 years, you build it and sell it for $4 billion. You still run it. It's the most amazing story, but I'd like to start earlier. I'd like to know about Dana White as a boy. I'd like to know when you're down in Southie, you told me the other day you had no money, trying to figure out what to do. And I know at that time, tell us a little bit about your childhood, but tell us a little bit about what formed you. And I believe that decisions are what shape our destiny more than the environment. Conditions are one thing, decisions are everything. You made a decision at 19 years old working at a hotel that changed your life as well. So tell us a little bit about your background and tell us about that decision, if you would.
Yeah, no, you're dead right. I didn't grow up with money. We weren't rich by any means, but I knew I wasn't going to college. I knew that wasn't a reality, and I didn't really want to go to college. One of the things that I was very lucky in my life with is I knew exactly what I wanted to do. From the time I was a young age, I knew I wanted to be in the fight business, and people thought I was crazy. Because when you look at at the time when I grew up, I just turned 49 years old. When I was growing up, you had Don King, Bob Arum. These guys were the big promoters in the fight game, and you know, everybody was set in their ways. They didn't think that the fight business could change.
Yeah.
And I believed it could. I had a lot of ideas, and I believed I could change the business. And I worked in Boston at a place called the Boston Harbor Hotel. What's up, Boston? You know the Boston Harbor Hotel. I was a bellman in there. I was 19 years old. I made good money. You know, there's some guys that get those jobs, and those are the type of jobs they're lifers. They want those jobs forever. And it's a good job. It's not a bad job.
Yeah.
It just wasn't for me. And I was literally standing in the lobby one day, and I'm like, what the hell am I doing here? What am I doing here? This isn't me. This isn't what I want. And I walked out the front door, and one of my good friends, he's still one of my good friends today, who was the doorman, says, what are you doing? I said, I'm quitting. And he's like, what? What are you gonna do? I said, I want to be in the fight business. He said, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. And he's glad I didn't take his advice. But yeah, I always knew what I wanted to do. And every day when I woke up, I would work toward that goal. I'll tell you guys a story. This is completely not a setup at all, I swear to God. And this is the first time I'm talking to him about this, but I didn't even have a car. I had a mountain bike that I rode everywhere in town with, and I had a Walkman. For those young kids, you don't know what a Walkman is, but I had a Walkman, and I used to listen to Awaken the Giant Within, and I swear to God, and Personal Power. I listened to both of those tapes.
Awesome, man.
Swear to God, and I actually used to buy them for people for gifts.
Really?
I used to give them away as gifts to people,
Wow.
and everything that was in there is absolutely true, makes sense, and applies to everybody's life. It really does. This is not a setup, I swear to God. This is the truth, and he and I have never talked about this,
Yes.
but yes.
Oh, that really touches
Yeah,
my
it's a
heart. I'm
fact.
thrilled to hear that was there at that time for you. Tell me, when you practice part of what I teach there also, because when you left, you went and found somebody who was the best in the business at that time, the fighting business, or one of them in Boston. And I understand you modeled him, but you were willing to do anything. Carry spit. Tell me a little bit about how you formed your initial understandings of the fight business.
So there was a kid in Boston. His name was Peter Welsh, and he's actually like a street fighting and boxing legend in town. And everybody had heard of him. And I literally sought this guy out. I went to him and I said, I know this is crazy, you don't know me, but I want to work with you. You don't have to pay me. I want to learn everything that you can teach about the fight game. And I worked under this guy for like 3 years.
Wow.
And I did everything from boxing to corner work. I was a referee in fights. I managed guys, everything you could possibly do in the fight business. I've done everything except score a fight. I've never been a judge.
Wow. Wait, what did you learn? What were one or two things you learned from him that were formative for you, that really shaped you in that area?
Everything. Everything I learned from that guy. I consider, you know how in martial arts you have a sensei? This guy was my sensei in the fight game. Yeah, and he took me under his wing, and nothing bad with having a guy that works for you that you don't have to pay either. That doesn't suck. So I worked hard for this guy. I learned everything, and then I eventually moved out to Vegas.
Well, stop there. I heard a story, I don't know if it's true, that some guys from the mob came to try and extract some money from you, and that's why you left. And is that true? And then why did you pick Vegas?
So all the Boston guys will remember Whitey Bulger and other people too.
Yes, of course.
So Whitey Bulger had a guy who worked under him, and his name was Kevin Weeks.